everybody, Jolt here from the TokenMinorities, and I am here with the NPL Season 5 Week 2 battle against the Detroit Liepards, coached by my new friend Cipher. He's a new coach to the league and is very skilled in the format, and we're pretty excited to have him as a part of the league. I highly recommend you go check out his channel right now because his content is fantastic and definitely worth a watch. But before I dive into this battle at all, I do want to give another shout out to our NPL YouTube channel. That will be a link in the description below as well. And that channel, it just keeps getting better and better. Let me tell you, the graphics came in this past week for all of our new shows on that channel, and they all look beautiful. Shout out to my friend Grant, Remington Graphics, for creating those for us. That also will be a link in the description below. Check him out. Very high quality graphics work from him. But yeah, definitely check out the NPL channel. Lots of cool stuff going on there, including like a weekly recap, power rankings, game of the week, and a new show called Sets of the Week that my friend Parker and Heracross Knight have been working on, and it's some pretty high quality stuff, so definitely take a look at that. But let's go ahead and jump on in to the preparation for my upcoming battle with Cipher and the Detroit Liepards. So his team is Heatran, Thunderous Incarnate, Gliscor, Tentacruel, Mega Gallade, Noivern, Ambipom, Conkeldurr, Celebi, Umbreon, and Beautifly. So the thing about his team, it's actually rated pretty low in the preseason power rankings and after his loss last week to Cloud Envy, but it's actually a pretty good team in that prepping for it is very awkward, especially for my team, to the point where I feel like I'm forced to bring a more hyper-offensive build in order to effectively beat him, mainly because Mega Gallade is so good offensively against my defensive core of Mega Venusaur, Empoleon, Sylveon. It has coverage that can hit all those very hard, but outside of Mega Gallade, he actually has good responses to hyper offense as well, in that he has things like Thunderous Incarnate, Scarf Heatran potentially. Noivern is very good against hyper offense because it's so fast. Ambipom's good against hyper offense because of its priority fake out. And Conkeldurr as well is also pretty solid against offense, considering I don't really have anything that can switch in on it very well if I were to run a very frail offensive build. So with all that said, prep is very awkward for him, and I'm going to have to essentially make a team that can work as both a hyper offensive team and as a bulky offense to balance type team, depending on what he decides to bring. So it's kind of an awkward matchup for that reason, but I think I'm also up to the team building challenge in doing so. But just some notable threats on his team, kind of like I already said, Mega Gallade, huge threat. It hits everything on my team very hard, and if it runs a set like Swords Dance, Zen Headbutt, and Shadow Sneak in close combat, that hits everything like very hard. Even my faster options that in my opinion are very strong against him, like my Fast Psychic, Victini, or Zelf, both are hit very hard by +2 Shadow Sneak. Fortunately, neither I believe is O-code by it, so that's something to keep in mind. But of course after Stealth Rocks that might not be the same story. So just Mega Gallade, easily the biggest threat to my team. I also think Scarf Heatran can be a huge threat here, or just an offensive Heatran in general, as it essentially forces me to bring something like Mega Venusaur, like a Spadef Mega Venusaur, to take hits from that, as otherwise nothing wants to. I could run like a Spadef Salamence if I so chose, but I don't really like Spadef Salamence otherwise in the matchup. It doesn't really help against anything else outside of maybe Celebi, but I have so many things that can deal with Celebi already that it just doesn't seem worth it. So I'm basically forced to bring Mega Venusaur this match, which kind of makes the hyper offense idea tough, because Mega Venusaur is setup fodder for Mega Gallade. So in playing this game, I have to be incredibly careful around Mega Gallade and make sure I have plenty of responses to it available at all times. The other big threat to my team, I would say, is the Thunderous Incarnate, as similarly to Mega Gallade, it has access to coverage that can beat my entire team. It can run Sludge Bomb or Flash Cannon for the Fairy, it can run Hidden Power Flying or Psychic for Mega Venusaur, just Thunderbolt in general does a ton, or the combination of Bolt Beam, Thunderbolt, Hidden Power Ice does a ton to my team as well. Fortunately I have Piloswine that can shut that down if need be, but just in general it's a big threat, and I'm going to have to play around it very cautiously, especially considering the fact that the priority Thunder Wave can really hinder a hyper-offensive approach to this game. So it's kind of complicated, but as far as my threats to his team, Victini, enormous threat to his team. All he has is Heatran that can really stop it, and I have enough ways on my team to lure Heatran to where I think a Scarf Victini can do a lot of work against this team, and that's exactly what I decided to build this team around this week, and I'll get into that here very shortly. But another big threat, I believe, is a Zelf to his team. Just that Psychic offense is very solid against him in general. He has no switch-ins to his Zelf, absolutely none, especially whenever I run something that can hit Heatran as well, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump on into that real quick because I don't want to spoil anything before I actually get to the team builder. So looking at the team, I decided to bring Victini, Lucario, Piloswine, Azelf, Sylveon, and Mega Venusaur. The Victini, as I already mentioned before, is a Choice Scarfed variant. Adamant Choice Scarfed is all I really thought was necessary in this matchup because this allows me to speed tie a modest Scarfed Celebi if he decided to run that. This lets me outspeed essentially anything that I could possibly outspeed with the Choice Scarf on his team. If he was going to run like a Choice Scarf Thundurus of his own, I'm not going to outpace that anyways if I run Jolly Scarf. So no real point in running Jolly here. The main thing I wanted to outspeed though, main things I wanted to outspeed were Non-Scarf, Noivern, and the Mega Gallade, as I want to have as many options as possible to handle those Pokemon, and it's just an added benefit to also be able to outpace the likes of a max speed Tentacruel or like a max speed Gliscor, which theoretically would outspeed my Victini if I were running Adamant without a Choice Scarf. And of course Celebi is also nice to guaranteed outspeed or at least speed tie with the Choice Scarf Adamant. Of course, unless it runs Timid, but Timid Scarf doesn't seem very good against my team. Anyways, Victini, very, very good against him. The only thing he has to stop it is the Heatran, so the rest of my team is really built around luring in the Heatran or weakening it to the point where it can't take a Volt Strike. Or Brick Break for that matter. I have Brick Break just in case something goes horribly wrong and I need to be able to hit the Heatran with my Victini, but I don't really think I'll need Brick Break. It's just kind of a last resort, don't really need anything else in that slot, so pretty much going to be spamming V-Create and U-Turn the entire match if all goes as planned. So that's the Victini. Now let's see how I build around it. So next up is the Lucario. Now Lucario functions very, very well both as a hyper offensive member as well as a more bulky offense balance member because of its priority extreme speed. That is the attack I'm going to be clicking more than anything, and for that reason alone, I actually strongly considered a choice banded Lucario in this matchup just because I see myself mainly clicking extreme speed. The reason I didn't opt for that is because he has things like Gliscor that I don't want to get up a Swords Dance against my team, because that hurts a lot considering the rest of what I brought. Like a Swords Dance Yachi Berry set could definitely be a problem for my team. And I guess the other reasoning for not wanting to get locked into extreme speed was the Heatran. If he brings in Heatran on the Lucario, I want to be able to hit it immediately with a close combat, etc. Swords Dance, probably unnecessary on this set because I don't really see myself clicking Swords Dance, but if push comes to shove and it becomes an opportunity, then I'm definitely going to do that, and we'll just kind of see what happens there. But the combination of Victini and Lucario puts in a lot of work against a team that is weaker to hyper offense, and that's kind of the hyper offense core of the team. And the thing about the rest of the mons on this team is that they function very well either in a balanced build, hyper offense build, or bulky offense build, or bulky offense approach to the game. It's built so that it can work in any format. It's kind of hard to explain. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get across here, but the team is meant to operate using any play style depending on what he brings. So next up is the Piloswine. The Piloswine is essentially a dedicated switch into the Thunderous Eye, mainly to make sure he can't get Volt Switch momentum against me, plus it's my rocker, and I saw Ashton, shout out to Ashton, use a Curse Piloswine in his one of his recent league games, and it pretty much swept his opponent, so I figured I'd give it a shot this week, and it looked like it has a pretty good matchup against Cipher, considering almost his entire team is hit super effectively by ground ice coverage, so that's a pretty good deal. The only things I believe that aren't hit super effectively by that are the Mega Gallade, Ambipom, Conkeldurr, and Umbreon. So most of his team is hit super effectively by that coverage, which is pretty awesome. Plus, Ice Shard helps put the Thundurus in range of an extreme speed from Lucario, which is pretty nice because that whole situation can allow me to dodge the Thunder Wave shenanigans and etc. So yeah, that's about all there is to say on that. If I can get up a Curse or two, I can put in a ton of work against this team and essentially take hits from everything he has to offer. Then we have the Azelf, which is my personal favorite for the week. This is a Natural Gift Ground base 100 Azelf set, and this is a pure Heatran lure as well as a pretty solid sweeper for the rest of his mons, as this has super effective coverage for essentially everything it needs. The biggest risk in bringing this week is that I don't hit the Umbreon very hard outside of U-Turn. If he runs like Pursuit on Umbreon, that could definitely put a dent in Azelf's day for me, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I think overall it's not going to be a huge deal because I can do a lot of work to the rest of his team. This, I think, is the most likely Pokemon that will lure in Heatran. I have another couple pretty solid Heatran lures coming up here in Sylveon and Mega Venusaur, but this can OHKO any form of Heatran that's not Sugar Berry, I believe. Maybe like max HP, max defense might have a chance to live. I'm not sure on that, but at least given the calcs that I made, the only way he can survive is if he is Sugar Berry, and I don't really expect Sugar Berry Heatran in this matchup just because he probably is going to want the leftovers to make sure he can wall Sylveon, as Sylveon can be a huge threat to his team if he doesn't have some method of recovery on the Heatran. So yeah, and then let's see, Ice Punch hits the Celebi, although I have U-turn for that. Ice Punch hits the Gliscor, also hits the Thundurus if need be. These EVs do allow me to outspeed Thundurus. And let's see, anything else worth noting? I don't think so. Just gonna pray I hit my Zen Headbutts and call it a day there. So next up is, one thing I should mention is that I'm actually intentionally underspeed creeping the Ambipom, because I can survive essentially any hit from this. From full, I'm going to have to let it use Fake Out or something else, but this can help me get momentum against the Ambipom late game, or even early game if, necessary. I don't think I'll let it take damage early game, but late game, if push comes to shove, I can slow U-turn on the Ambipom into a threat and do some work that way, as really my team is not great against Ambipom. I think Ambipom could be a pretty big threat to me if played well, but I think I can play around it just because it's not the strongest thing in the world. It's just kind of fast and annoying, so I think I can handle it. But let's go ahead and move on to the next mon. That is the Sylveon. This EV spread is probably the one that has the most effort going into it. The EVs here do allow me to always survive a +2 Zen Headbutt from a Jolly Mega Gallade after Stealth Rocks. That's the goal with this one. And then I just kind of threw the rest into Special Defense, just to take the special hits a little bit better, and then I have 20 in speed just in case he wants to get cheeky with his Conkeldurr and try to speed creep a non-speed invested Sylveon with that, so that he can take me out with the Sheer Force Poison Jab. That's definitely a thought that I was considering. Luckily I do have the Venusaur that I can switch in on this anyways, but it's nice to have 2 checks to the Conkeldurr in case he brings both Conkeldurr and Mega Gallade, as I'm essentially forced to sack Mega Gallade, or to sack Mega Venusaur to the Mega Gallade to make sure that it can't get up like a free Swords Dance, Bulk Cover Substitute without taking a bunch of damage, because I need damage on that thing to be able to revenge it with my faster stuff. So yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty good mon against the team. Hyper Voice hits almost everything. Hidden Power Ground hits the 2 things Hyper Voice does not hit super effectively or neutrally, those being the Tentacruel and the Heatran, so it hits those pretty hard, helps put them in range of other mons, hence the hyper offensive nature of this team. And yeah, Wish Protect just to try to keep my team alive if I'm running a more bulky offensive playstyle, depending on what he brings. So then finally, we have the Mega Venusaur, primarily my response to Heatran, especially Scarf Heatran, as the rest of my team is kind of decimated by that. Victini can switch in once, maybe twice if he doesn't click Earth Power, but otherwise Scarf Heatran does a lot of work to the team if I don't have Mega Venusaur around. So the combination of Scarf Heatran and SD Mega Gallade could become a problem. I'll say that right now. It could become a problem if he brings that specific combination, but there really wasn't a better way for me to prepare for that, considering my options to stop a Scarf Heatran were pretty limited. So max sped F on this to hopefully take out the Heatran with the Mega Venusaur. Maybe if he's not expecting the Earthquake or something, I can at least whittle it to the point where I can revenge it with a Scarf Victini's Bolt Strike or Brick Break. So then Energy Ball instead of Giga Drain this week because of the likelihood of him bringing a Black Sludge Tentacruel, not Black Sludge, Liquid Ooze Tentacruel, as Energy Ball does a good amount of damage still, and I don't have to risk losing health from the Giga Drain, draining the Liquid Ooze that I do not want. And then Sludge Bomb hits everything else very hard, especially the Mega Gallade, as that should at least one Sludge Bomb, maybe 2, will put it in range of Extreme Speed from Lucario, and just 1 Sludge Bomb will easily put it in range of V-Create from the Victini. So that's the team. It's kind of a complicated build this week. Definitely kind of hard to articulate to you guys. Hopefully it's understood. And let's go ahead and hop on into the battle, and I'll show you how this crazy team worked this week against Cipher's dangerous Detroit Liepards. Just a sec. Okay, and here we are with the team preview, and he really did bring a pretty similar team to what I was expecting. I'm pretty happy to not see the Conkeldurr, just because it takes a little bit of pressure off of the Mega Venusaur to where it really can focus on dealing with the Heatran, really solely, I guess, and kind of the Ambipom as well, as Heatran is, or Mega Venusaur rather, is certainly my best switch into the Ambipom, at least at face value. And yeah, so I'm pretty excited to not see the Conkeldurr. Unfortunately, he did bring the Mega Gallade and the Thundurus and the Heatran, and looking at the team build, it very definitely could be a Scarf Heatran. At least is probably offensive, since he did bring the Tentacruel, which probably can, if it's Spadef, take hits from the Sylveon relatively well, unless he's expecting like Psyshock, which is possible. It's possible that he brought 2 Special Walls in this game, I just kind of don't expect it. And yeah, so overall, I think the team preview is looking okay. I do think that Victini is looking really solid, just like I said in the team building process. I just need to basically take out the Heatran with one of my multiple lures, and I'll put in a lot of work with Victini that way. Lucario is also looking very good. He didn't really bring the best stop to it, or the best check to it, in my opinion, being the Conkeldurr, so Lucario definitely has a pretty fun time if I can get up a +2, but even without the +2, I can do a lot to most of his team with extreme speed and close combat coverage, so that's pretty awesome. But in terms of the lead matchup, I will be leading with Mega Venusaur this game just because I'm expecting him to lead Ambipom. It's certainly his best lead against my team, and if he decides to lead Mega Gallade, then I have to go straight into Sylveon and hope I don't get flinched by +2s in Headbutt. That's basically all there is to it, because I can't sacrifice the Venusaur without knowing what kind of Heatran he has, as if it's a Scarf Heatran, it just runs through my team like I mentioned before. But let's go ahead and jump on into the battle and see what happens. So, like I mentioned before, I will be leading off with Mega Venusaur, and he does indeed lead off with his Daniki-kun, which is his Ambipom. I'm sorry if I totally butchered that, I'm not very good with nicknames like that, but, so expecting him to just go straight for the fake out, I'm just going to Mega Evolve, take this opportunity to ensure I can switch into Heatran later on. And there's really nothing he can immediately threaten me with on turn 1 anyways, even Acrobatics from an Adamant Life Orb. Ambipom has a very minimal chance to 2-hit KO me from full health, so he does just go straight for the fake out, revealing Normal Gem, which is pretty interesting. And the fact that he had a Normal Gem kind of alludes to the fact that he probably has Acrobatics, because that is a utilized item, meaning that Acrobatics power is boosted now. And expecting him to try to go for Acrobatics, I'm going to swap into my Victini, knowing that I can take it very well. Very fortunately for me, he actually goes into his Celebi here, which I did not predict, I'll be honest, but this is pretty much fantastic for me, as I'm essentially free to go for a V-Create if I want to take this thing out right here, but U-Turn is probably my better play, because it's pretty likely he'll go into Heatran. He actually chooses to stay in and takes like 90% from U-Turn, which I'm okay with. I'm kind of thinking he's going to try to recover up on this turn, so I am just going to go straight into my Styx, which is my pig, the Piloswine. Shout out to Styx, and he just goes for the Earth Power. Again, not really expecting that either, but I figured I could live any hit that wasn't, or I can live anything from it for sure. I didn't think he'd go for a Giga Drain on that particular turn, and now I probably should have gone for the Ice Shard. I definitely could have, but I decided to go for Rocks instead, which allows him to get off a ton of damage with the Ice Shard against my Piloswine, which is a little bit unfortunate, but not the end of the world, because Rocks are now up, and he has to bring in his Tentacruel if he wants to get rid of them at any point, and if I can keep up Rocks most of the game, then that's pretty awesome, because that little bit of chip damage I get on all of his switch-ins just helps it become easier and easier for things like Scarf Victini, Lucario, and Azelf to win late game. And just based upon the team that he brought, I do have to kind of play a more hyper-offensive approach in this game, just because he didn't bring Conkeldurr, so I'm not really as threatened in taking the hyper-offensive approach, considering I don't have to hold on to Heatran necessarily, or hold on to Mega Venusaur necessarily the entire game, as long as this is not Choice Scarfed. And as we'll reveal here pretty soon, I go for the U-turn expecting the switch, or just U-turn in general is the best play. And I believe I go straight into... Don't remember what I go into. We're going to find out here pretty soon. I go into Groot, the Mega Venusaur. Okay, so this is the part where I determine what kind of set he is, as I know I should be able to beat this thing 1v1, regardless of what set it is. He decides to go for the substitutes. I guess expecting the Sleep Powder. That's a decent assumption. I'm not really sure otherwise. Maybe he was just scouting for the Earthquake. That's perfectly okay play as well. But here I expected him to switch into his Celebi and eat up the EQ and go for a recover on my Mega Venusaur. Perhaps he's like a very specially defensive variant. That would make sense why he switched it in on the Mega Venusaur in the first place, but I don't really understand, or I'm not really sure what his set was at this point, but obviously Sludge Bomb does nothing to the Heatran, as he decides to stay in a Magma Storm, revealing that I take nothing from that, so that's pretty cool. This means that I can definitely wall this to no end, and here he goes for the substitute, I guess expecting my Synthesis, which is an okay play on his part, and I'm going to get myself up to a pretty good amount of health again, as I really do want this thing to be as high of health as possible, as long as the Ambipom is around, and just to the point where he might feel he has to go for a Sword Dance with Mega Gallade or Bulk Up to be able to do damage to me. This can help me get chip damage on Mega Gallade and etc. So I do manage to avoid that Magma Storm. Didn't really matter though, because I was going for Synthesis anyways and would have been up at the same amount of health, so no big deal there. And now on this turn, I'm of course just going to go straight for another Earthquake to break the substitute. He's just kind of letting himself get whittled down here, which is something I'm very okay with. Definitely interested in hearing his commentary on this series of plays, because I don't really see a way that Heatran can beat a especially defensive Venusaur, and I feel he could pretty easily just go into Celebi and recover up on me if he's specially defensive. I don't think Sludge Bomb is going to be doing that much against it anyways, but I might be wrong on that. I'm not really sure, but I'm just going to go for the Earthquake here on this turn and break the sub. As I would like to know how much the Earthquake's actually doing, but there's really no way to test that investment when he keeps going for Substitute. I doubt it's going to be doing very much at all. And here I was a little bit concerned he might actually have Taunt, and if he had Taunt on this turn, then that could be really, really bad, because I'm actually below half health, and if I was taunted and he went for another Magma Storm, I could essentially lose my Heatran, or my Mega Venusaur, and I'd be stuck and dead, essentially. But he decides to get his Rocks up here, which is a good play on his part, as Rocks definitely hinder my Victini and his Elf quite a bit, especially when it comes to Mega Gallade, as he's going to most certainly go into Mega Gallade here. I am below half health, and Rocks are up. I cannot afford to switch into my Sylveon and get flinched, because if he's +2, he gets +2 on this switch out, and I switch into Sylveon. He flinches me with Zen Headbutt, has Shadow Sneak, I lose the game big time. So I have to essentially stay in here and make sure I get the damage off with Mega Venusaur to ensure that I can't get swept by this right here. So I'm going to lose Mega Venusaur here very soon, but he does try to go for the substitute, predicting my switch probably into Sylveon. I don't know if he's predicting the switch into Sylveon. I'm not really sure what the prediction was there, because if I went Sylveon, I definitely could have blown right past him with a Hyper Voice. So not really sure the thought process on the sub there, but he decides to go for the Swords Dance, which is a-okay by me. I'm just going to go straight for another Sludge Bomb, further putting it in range of an Extreme Speed from Lucario, and also putting it in range of Victini's anything. Most certainly even a U-turn probably at this point, but he's just going to take me out here, and that will give me a free switch into my Lucario, for which he has 0 switch-ins, because he did let his Heatran go down. He has nothing that can switch in and resist a Extreme Speed, so in comes Lucario, and I'm just going to click that Extreme Speed button and do a ton to whatever comes in. With Rocks up, he really has no easy switch-ins. Even Thundurus is 2-hit KO'd by this with Rocks up, so goodbye Mega Gallade. And the biggest threat, thankfully, is gone. Actually, the 2 biggest threats, in my opinion, are now gone in Heatran and Mega Gallade, so now it's just a matter of making sure Ambipom doesn't gimmick me out of this game, as that's all Ambipom really is, in my opinion, is a gimmick Pokemon, but a gimmick Pokemon with good, priority fake out. But regardless, he goes into his Thundurus here. I still have Piloswine alive, so I am going to go straight into that, as I really see no reason not to. I think he's going to go for a Thunder Wave or a Volt Switch. Well, not Thunder Wave. He'll go for a Thunderbolt on this turn, in my opinion, but he actually goes for a Dark Pulse. So I guess he was expecting me to go into my Victini. That's quite possible, although in my opinion I think Thunderbolt was his better play, especially considering he actually has Flash Cannon on this anyways, and I was going to get that Ice Shard off damage regardless, so not really sure on that one either, but he does just take me out with a Flash Cannon. But that's a-okay, because losing Piloswine here only means that I get a free switch now into Lucario, and he's easily in Extreme Speed range. And here we are with the same situation once again. He has no true switches to Lucario. He can't risk me getting a free +2, and he's just going to sack this right here, and down goes the Thundurus. So all I believe he has left at this point is the Ambipom, the Celebi, and the Tentacruel, and none of those are looking particularly threatening outside of potentially the Ambipom, but I feel I have enough to handle the Ambipom to where it couldn't be that big of a threat. Or shouldn't be that big of a threat. Here I am going to swap right out into... What do I go into now? I go into Reverberate the Sylveon, as with the Mega Gallade down, this thing probably becomes the least useful thing on the team, even though it obviously still has some utility. There's always the potential that he'll miss a Gunk Shot or something, and, if he misses, he misses, and I get a kill with Sylveon. That'd be pretty cool. But he does get a crit with a Fake Out, which kind of confirms that, or it doesn't confirm, but that makes it a lot harder for me to survive anything from this, because even if it has, like, double hit or a return, it probably will take me out from that range, unfortunately. But he does actually switch out as I go for a Protect, just trying to get a little more HP back, not really feeling threatened by anything else he has on his roster. and he decides to go into Celebi. I think he probably should have gone straight into Tentacruel on that turn, as it would have given him potentially an opportunity to get rid of the rocks, in which, you know, it might help keep Ambipom outside of extreme speed range, something like that, as Celebi can't really do much at all to Sylveon, so I'm going to be able to eat up that Psychic and take out the Celebi on this turn, and he's going to be then left with the Tentacruel and the Ambipom. Tentacruel is most certainly probably his best play. I don't know, I think Ambipom is okay here too. I think it would have taken me out with Fake Out plus anything. So I'm not really sure there, but he does decide to go into his Tentacruel, and I believe he makes a misplay here and going for the knockoff. Maybe he felt he needed to have any shot of winning, but I'm not going to risk either of my win cons being a Zelf or Victini at this stage in the match, so I'm just going to leave my Sylveon in there. It's doing its job, it's weakening his Pokemon to the point where I can win with my faster stuff, and that's exactly been the game plan all along. I just go straight for the Hidden Power Ground as he goes for the knockoff, and I do enough to where it's most certainly in range of Zen Headbutt from a Zelf, maybe even in range of Natural Gift Ground, but I'm not going to really count on it just in case he has a ton of defense investment, and if it was a heavily defense invested Tentacruel, it might not be in range of Natural Gift Ground at this stage. So I am going to be forced to go into my Zelf here. Not really forced, but I choose to go into my Zelf here. And my options are Zen Headbutt or Natural Gift Ground, despite the fact that Zen Headbutt has imperfect accuracy. As you can see, I missed my first one. I would have had to hit one anyways to take this out, considering Natural Gift Ground probably would not kill. So Zen Headbutt, easily my best play, and I'm going to go for a second one here as he knocks off my Apricot Berry, and it gets a little bit dicey here, as if I miss this one, I would have to play essentially immaculately to be able to pull off the win. Still, I think I could still do it, but fortunately I'm able to land the second Zen Headbutt, and down goes the Tentacruel. All he has left now is the Ambipom. And at this stage, I decided to try to preserve differential if it's possible. I'm not sure if it's possible, I don't know his moveset yet, but considering he's only gone for Fake Out so far and hasn't revealed anything else, I think there's a chance he might be Fake Out Last Resort. And if that's the case, my Lucario might have a shot of surviving Fake Out plus Last Resort. So I'm going to go straight into my Lucario, and I'm going to absorb the Fake Out like it's nothing. And then I'm going to go for the Extreme Speed on the following turn and hope he has Last Resort, and if he has Brick Break or Low Kick, then I'm obviously going to lose my Lucario here, but it was worth a shot because it easily puts him in range of V-Create from Victini, and he does have Brick Break, so unfortunately I won't get a 3-0 in this matchup, but Victini can pretty easily just come right in and revenge this with a V-Create, leaving us with a 2-0 victory in MPL Week 2. So, great game, Cipher. It really was a good game. And I think the team structure worked to perfection, honestly. The team was honestly one of the most advanced teams I think I've ever built. And it may not look that way on paper, but considering I managed to build a team that could function just as well with a hyper-offensive approach as with a bulky offensive approach as with a more balanced approach, I think, you know, that's a pretty tough feat, and I managed to pull that off this week, and I'm pretty happy about that. So the Toronto Raptors do advance to a 2-0 record with a +7 differential, leaving us in second place in the league right now behind Togevor's Arizona Carvanas. And won't you know that we actually play the Arizona Carvanas next week. So we get our next matchup against Toj in MPL Week 3, and his team is very hacks-ridden this season, to say the least. He has the likes of Togekiss, he has Jirachi, he has Hurricane Spam from Mega Pidgeot. He's got all kinds of just nuisances on his team, and I'm pretty excited to have the opportunity to exploit those this next week. So I'm calling you out, Toj. It's going to be a heck of a game, and I've got some very fun presents in store for you. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next week. Peace.